Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 136 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And before we get to this week's guest, John McGarry, otherwise known as Magee, let me remind you about everything that's available in the shop at mistresscarrie.com. If you're planning on hitting a concert at some point in the near future, bag restrictions are pretty strict, but you can get a Mistress Carrie concert-approved bag. It's clear plastic and can be worn around the waist or crossbody. There's also the 7-in-1 bartender tool, fitted caps, trucker hats, new visors, plus t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, coffee mugs, pint glasses, and so much more. Just log on to mistresscarrie.com and check out the shop. I've always said the Mistress Carrie podcast is a rock lifestyle podcast. So it's not all about just interviewing the bands you love. It's also about talking to the people that help make the music possible, whether it's in the studio or at a live concert. And my guest this week, John McGarry, otherwise known as Magee in drum circles, is a professional drum tech who's been doing it for over 27 years. And he's worked with some of our favorite bands like Aerosmith, Sevendust, Hoobastank, Stone Temple Pilots, Styx, Extreme, Stained, and worked with artists like Steve Vai, Sammy Hagar, David Lee Roth, Ringo Starr, Josh Groban, and more. I've known Magee a really long time, and I thought it would be really interesting for you to hear from someone that spends his nights sitting behind the drummer. One of the people that's always dressed in black backstage at the shows to make sure that your favorite band's concert goes off without a hitch. So if you've ever wondered about the show going on within the show, there's nobody better to ask than Magee. We talked about touring and drumsticks, the styles of different drummers, how he got into it in the first place, how everyone that's ever toured has had a Spinal Tap moment, what it's like living on a tour bus, what your favorite drummers are like when they're not on stage, and so much more. And Magee has a completely unique take on what it's like to be out on the road. So, allow me to introduce you to John McGarry, otherwise known as Magee.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you're listening to, you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
What's up, Magee?
Hello, Carrie.
Thanks for coming. Welcome to MCHQ.
Thank you for having me. I love it here.
It's cool, right?
It is. For all you listeners, I just got a tour, so it's a very rad place here.
This is the culmination of 2.5 years of being locked inside because of the pandemic.
Yeah, well, with all that time, you did an amazing job.
Thank you. For anybody that doesn't know who you are, I tried to remember when I met you the first time, because we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
I can't remember when we met. Can you remember?
Yeah, it would be 1999. I was out with Sevendust on the Warped Tour.
That's when we met?
Yep, I did Morgan for the summer.
That was out at the Northampton airport, right?
Yeah. Yep, I remember.
Damn.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's one of those things that, like, I feel like I've always known you, and I really did rack my brain to try and figure out how it is that I met you. So I'm psyched that you remembered.
Yeah, as I get older, my memory kind of wanes, but I do remember that.
So for anybody that listens to the podcast, I always call this a rock lifestyle podcast, and that it's all about all of the things that encompass rock music and the lifestyle around it. So it's not just bands. And I interviewed a mutual friend of ours, Frank Sgambellone, on the show.
Oh, yeah, Frank is a legend.
And he was like, why do people want to hear me talk? Like, they want to hear from the bands. And the way I explained it to him was like, look, anybody that listens to this show is a lover of music, right? We're a lover of bands, live concerts, all of that. You guys have these jobs that unless you kind of work in the industry, you know they exist, but you don't really understand what you do, why they need you, and kind of what goes into making the end show that we all in the audience get to watch every night. And so is your technical term a drum tech? Is that your job description?
Yeah, mostly I've been a drum tech my whole life. You know, used to be a drum roadie, but we got upgraded to technicians somewhere along the line.
Yeah, the word roadie kind of went by the wayside, which is when I tell people what I used to do before I was on the radio, I tell them I was a roadie because that career ended for me in 1998 when radio became my full-time job. But for a few years, I was out on the road and, you know.
And a lot of people confuse roadie with groupie.
Right.
They do.
Especially when you're a girl tech.
Yes, exactly.
And they're trying to figure out what it is that you do. And you're like, well, I don't have a Leatherman and a C-wrench in my back pocket for no reason, bud. I'm definitely not here to service the bands.
That's true.
You know, I haven't showered in 3 days. I've got no makeup on. My hair's in a ponytail. I'm wearing work boots. I'm definitely not here for the after-show shenanigans.
No, and I think just a lot of people in general they don't really think what goes into getting a show up every day.
Well, that's why I wanted to be able to have these conversations on the show, because I think for music lovers, they're interested. Not only that, but because I used to do that kind of work, the bands can't do it without you. So it's a very symbiotic relationship where you can't have a job without the bands, but the bands can't have a show without you.
Yeah, and someone had a quote years ago that said, bands make it rock, roadies make it roll.
Yeah, see, there you go. Exactly. So I love the idea of being able to sit down and kind of talk about the behind the scenes working of shows and kind of working with the bands that we love, because I also know that the roadies have the best stories. Because while some of you guys are kind of tenured with artists, and the artists, even when they're not on the road, kind of keep you on retainer so they don't lose you, a lot of techs hop from project to project so that they can continue to work. So you could be working with a country act one day and a rock act the next day and then working with a jazz act. Like, for you, anybody that's playing the drums is fair game.
Yeah, that's true. Although I've never done a country act. They tend to use a lot of people out of Nashville.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a couple techs to do the whole stage.
Yeah.
You know, I primarily just do drums. Although in my career, I've also been a carpenter. You know, I've done stage manager, small stuff out there. I was a personal assistant to Mr. Steven Tyler for a while. That lasted about 6 months.
And it's one of those things where, you know, rock, it comes up on the show a lot that rock music is invading Nashville. It seems like more and more rock bands are moving there too. So I think eventually, you know, Nashville's going to run out of techs. The country guys might have to start outsourcing stuff because there's a lot of rock music getting made down there.
Yeah, that's true. And also, for a lot of years now, though, a country act is more like a rock pop show anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, they're huge. They're selling out arenas everywhere. People, I don't know their music personally. I'm an old school guy. You know, I grew up in the 70s, you know, so I tend to kind of like 70s music, 80s rock, you know, 90s stuff. Just depends on the mood.
So can we go back and kind of talk about the start for you in your career? So first of all, we all call you Magee, but what's your real name?
Well, that's it. I had it legally changed. No, my name is John. And a lot of bands I work for don't even know my real name.
That's why I asked you, because I know that a lot of our mutual friends and people that you've worked with are probably going to hear this and they're going to be like, that's what Magee's real name is?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of good that way.
But you're a New England guy, born and raised in Mass, right?
Yeah, and I grew up in a town called Rockland, of all places. So my start kind of came... Well, our mutual friend Dana Spellman, he's my best friend. I met him in '89 while I was doing construction. And he had a local band drummer, and I always liked the drums since I was a kid, since I saw Kiss in the 70s on TV.
What kid that saw Kiss in the 70s wasn't inspired to do something?
Oh, yeah, and I was just drawn to the drums. Peter was kind of like...
He was always my favorite guy, too.
Was the best. And fast forward, I got to become good friends with Peter still. From a tour we did, Aerosmith and Kiss. So, but I don't know, going back, so Dana had a local band. I started, he invited me to a show. I helped him carry the drums in, and I had a van. So,
friend with a van.
Oh, yeah. So my rusty old Chevy kind of became the roadie van. We'd load it up, they rehearsed in Brockton, Mass. And so I did that, that was my lifestyle for 3 years. I had hair back then. If you listeners, I'm bald right now, but I had curly locks and long hair, and I just enjoyed doing that, It just became, you're hanging out with your best friends, going to shows and just having fun.
So you didn't grow up a musician, and you didn't grow up a drummer.
No. But ask any of the fellow techs I tour with. I am not a great drummer.
Because normally, and it happens a lot with guitar players, and we've all seen it happen, James Hetfield, that the drummer, the guitar player, the bass player gets injured, and the roadie kind of steps in.
Yeah, and I missed an opportunity on that a few years ago because of my lack of playing on Aerosmith when Joey had got hurt one night, and he couldn't perform for a while. And they had a show that morning, the next day, and... in my head, I know every nuance of every Aerosmith song.
I bet.
I can air drum it in my mind. I just physically can't play it.
Right.
And, I could have stepped up if I knew how to play, but it just didn't work out.
Drummers' brains are different. And I say that because of our mutual friend, Mike Mangini, who was gracious enough during the real height of the pandemic to come on the show. And he hooked cameras up. You've seen his rig. And he had the drum set in the house, had all the cameras, and he tried to the best of his ability, and Mangini well. Getting into the Mangini brain is a thing. There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah, I usually stay clear of it.
And I tried to get him to describe to me what is going on in his head while he's playing these complex Dream Theater drum parts. A drummer's brain, I think, much like a helicopter pilot's brain, has to be able to compartmentalize and be able to do 4 different things with 4 different appendages at the same time. There's a certain thing with music that you can learn, and there's a certain thing with music that's just inherent as an ability that I believe you're born with. I find it really difficult if you don't have the ability to learn the ability.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Because you've been immersed with drummers for decades. And if you can't play the drums, that kind of proves my theory.
Well, I can keep time, play beats and stuff, but like I could never go out and do a show unless they played the same song, 14 times that night, 4 on the floor, Don't let me do any drum fills.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I am in awe of. Growing up in the marching band in school, like a lot of us did, like I just don't understand it, but I love it so much. It's the same thing that I talk about with songwriting. I'm so envious of the ability, but I just can't do it myself.
Yeah, and neither can I. But one thing about being, I'm on stage every night. I sit behind the drummers, and every downbeat of every song or every intro, I still get goosebumps. I'm going on my 27th year now of being on the road. But to kind of backtrack a little bit, when I was working for Dana locally, and then I said, I got to get out of construction. I went to an art school in Fort Lauderdale for a couple of years just to get away from everything. And I came back, couldn't find a job. And during that time, he had moved in with Mangini and had been taking drum lessons off him. And so Mike had got the gig with Steve Vai, and he needed a drum kit driven out to Rochester, New York to play with an orchestra. And so Dana recommended me. So I'd never met Mike at that point. So I loaded up a kit for him from his storage. And he always laughs at this, but he had baby seats in there. I'm just saying that because it's an inside joke. He had car seats, even though he didn't have kids. But so I drove it out there, and I worked, with everybody for a week. And I think my humor actually helped get me the gig with Steve's tech. I cracked him up a few times, and I worked hard. And he says, I don't know if you can tune a drum, but we're going on a world tour in 2 months, and we need somebody to set up drums and keyboards. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, sure, man. I'll try anything, So, a few months later, we did a 21 country world tour, and I kind of cut my teeth on it.
Wow. Well, first of all, what did you study in art school?
Industrial design. There was only about 9 of us in the class. I was like 23. All the other guys were 18. They were all better artists than me, but I did the work. I was paying for it myself, and I was a bouncer and a bar back till like 3 a.m. Then I had to get up at 6 to go to school, and I showed up. That's my. As you see, I showed up 40 minutes early today.
Yeah, so you text me, right? And you're like, hey, I'll see you at noon. I'm like, okay, cool. Then you text me and you're like, well, I left a little early. Can I come over now? And I'm like, yeah, but I need to go put pants on.
Well, it was always instilled to me, if you're 10 minutes early, you're 30 minutes late.
Yeah, you would have been great in the military.
Yeah, I would have been.
The sense of humor and the promptness are two things that are required for success in the military and a lot of other professions as well. But
yeah, I guess when you get that stuff instilled in you, you just grow up like that.
I'm perpetually 5 minutes late for everything.
Well,
it just always happens.
As long as you get there at least within 10 minutes.
But I'll stay 2 hours late to make sure the job gets done right. So when I was out on the road, it was the same kind of thing where it was like, getting there on time, okay, but the work ethic, that the things that you're talking about, whether it be me working in radio, me working as a tech, I think those are skills, being able to work with people, being able to be flexible, being able to laugh in the worst of times, embracing the shit, and to admit when you don't know something and to be willing to learn new things. Those are skills that make you incredibly successful in the music business, but skills that I feel like make you incredibly successful doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of describes my character.
Yeah.
To a T, pretty much.
Well, which is why we've known each other for 24 years now?
Yeah.
This year?
Coming up on that.
Which is crazy.
Oh, that was a rough summer, too, with those guys, because they were partying pretty hard.
Sevendust? Oh, 24 Sevendust back in 1999.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that Warped Tour was horrible because you never knew when you were going to play.
Right.
So you'd find out at 10 in the morning, all right, Sevendust is going on at 12:30 today on the B stage.
Yeah.
And you had to get set up, and every night, old Clint would want to wrestle me in the front lounge with a lit cigarette in his mouth. He burned like 3 or 4 of my shirts.
So when you take that famous trip to upstate New York, pack up the drums for Mangini, spend a week out there, and then get offered a job by Steve Vai to go on a world tour, there's got to come a realization with you where you're like, okay, they know that I don't have a lot of experience, but I make them laugh and I work really hard. But you still got to do the job, right? The expectation is that if you accept the job, you got to be able to do the job. So they say, okay, we're leaving on the tour in 2 months. What did you do for those 2 months to learn how to do that job, to get ready to go out on that Vai tour?
Like I said, I don't have the greatest memory, but I don't think I really did anything. I was probably nervous leading up to it, wondering, how am I going to do this stuff? And we call it learn while you earn.
Yeah.
And, I flew out to California for the first time, and I stayed at one of Steve Vai's houses where his studio was. it was up on a second floor, so we had to carry everything up a flight of stairs into the small studio, rehearsed for a while, and it just, I was taught by other roadies, you should do this, we don't do that really, and just use your instinct, and I'm always willing to help, lift something or load a truck.
Yeah.
And it's helped me through the years. People want to work with somebody like that, not the guy who's getting loaded or doing drugs.
Or saying that's not my job.
Oh, yeah, you run into that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not touching that. That's probably why my back is horrible right now. But I was never a roadie that partied much on the road.
Yeah.
Japan, I would let loose a little bit. I'd like to drink a little bit. I've never done drugs in my life, and
you're not even a coffee drinker. I tried to offer you coffee, which I should have a tap run down here to MCHQ because I sip on coffee all day.
Well, I was saving my cup for you. You can have 2 cups. Yeah, I tried it as a kid, didn't like it.
When you get offered this gig, right? You grow up a rock music fan, a construction worker from Rockland. This is Steve Vai.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty...
it's very unprofessional when you're a professional tech like you are to get giddy over musicians and fame and all of that stuff because it's part of the gig. But your first gig, working for Steve Vai, when you're a rock fan, 1 minute you're a construction worker that's going to art school, and the next minute you're at Steve Vai's house humping his gear around.
Yeah, it's quite an insane turnaround when you think about it.
What year was this?
That was 96, 1996.
So Vai was very well known, had already done his stint with David Lee Roth at the time.
Yeah.
Like my Steve Vai thing is like high school for me. We drove around in my friend's hot rods and listened to Flexible on cassette and smoked pot. That's like when I think of Steve Vai, that's what I think of is like the audience is listening and the crazy videos. But to me, Steve Vai Flexible is like, I'm one of those music people that attributes memories to what I was listening to at the time. And Steve Vai Flexible is one of the soundtracks of like my high school years. I love that album. It's so friggin' weird, but so good.
It is. I would just sit there and be in awe of what he could do on a guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-blowing, because not having much musical ability, I know what it takes to get to that level.
Yeah.
So, like I know who a good drummer is and who isn't. I know who a good guitar player is, singers, just from being around it so much.
Yeah. It's people tell me that I have a good ear for good songs, because that's always been part of my job, especially programming radio stations, that you've got to listen to a lot of music and be able to say like, oh, this is a good song. This is going to be successful. But I can't write songs. I can't play them. But I guess if you're immersed in it enough, it just kind of becomes this osmosis kind of thing where you pick it up.
Yeah, I think it just kind of sinks in, and you have the ability. I mean, not songs... Everything's so different. Not like I don't listen to modern radio much. I mean, I have Sirius satellite, so I listen to the bridge, sounds of the 70s. I love, singer-songwriters, me and Sharon go back on that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Who's our favorites. And so I like that stuff, but I also like the hard rock of the 80s.
Yeah.
Van Halen, Priest,
Maiden.
Yeah, Maiden, Queen,
Yep.
The Beatles. I mean... Anybody that doesn't like the Beatles is insane.
I just watched the Abbey Road documentary that Mary McCartney did. Have you seen that yet?
No, I'm 2 episodes into the one that came out earlier this year.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen that one.
So Mary McCartney made a documentary. It's a film. It's not a series about Abbey Road Studios and the history of the studio, because she spent so much of her life there because of the time, obviously, with their dad and the Beatles, and then obviously with Wings, and he still works in that studio. And it tells the story of how the studio got built, the different phases of musical history, how it was really hurting in the 70s, and how John Williams and film scoring kind of brought it back, and all the music that's been made there, and why it's still such a popular studio for people to record in because of how it sounds. It's a fascinating documentary if you're looking to watch it, but it's called If These Walls Could Sing. It's on Disney+.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
But I've been nerding out on all the Beatles stuff too.
Oh, it's insane.
The Rick Rubin series is great.
Yeah.
Obviously the Peter Jackson series, which I think is the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like watching Paul McCartney write Get Back like in the moment.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And it's like reading a book that you've already read or watching a movie that you know how it ends. It's like you know how the song ends up. You know what it sounds like and you're hearing him work through the parts and you're like, oh my God. Like having documentation of how an artist, a master of the craft like McCartney, wrote songs.
Oh yeah, and people forget how young they were too.
Oh,
nowadays it's like you look at someone of that age nowadays compared to then.
They were broken up by 30.
I know.
And they wrote all that music in their 20s.
Yeah, it's mind numbing to think about.
Yeah. But it always comes up on the show. I'm glad that you're in the Beatles camp.
Oh yeah, you have to be.
People that don't like the Beatles.
I wouldn't let people that don't like the Beatles around me or my animals. Those people aren't right in the head.
So when you start going out on this tour, right? You're out with Vi, you're traveling the world, the kid from Rockland that maybe had gone on a trip or two, but had not traveled the world at this point.
Yeah, at that point, I went at 16, I went on a cruise to Mexico. that was it. I went to Canada when I was 18 for Thanksgiving weekend, and I got mugged.
Canadians are supposed to be so nice.
Well, I was a bit inebriated, so I don't know what I said, but.
So when you start touring, getting thrust into the touring world is a steep learning curve, especially when you're learning by earning, right? Like you said, because you're surrounded by people that do this for a living and you're the slow guy.
Yeah, exactly. And Mike had a big drum kit, to set up, and, I would help mic it and wire it and stuff and put on the microphones and all that stuff. And so your day consists of a lot of little stuff,
Yeah.
I always say I get inside the drummer's head really well when you watch them, what they want, what they're going to want during the show, if it's certain drinks, where do they want their set list. I want a towel here, that right cymbal, I want the felt on that loose, so that cymbal flops a little more, this one tight, and it's just anything you can think of that can go wrong too. You want to have a backup plan. Like most of the time, a drum kit will stay together. But, you want to prepare, have an extra snare drum, extra pedals, maybe some extra cymbals. Morgan Rose used to destroy cymbals.
Well, Morgan.
I mean, he killed them. When we did Woodstock 99, he broke 3 cymbals in like 20 minutes. He just shattered them.
I heard somebody describe, and it might have been Morgan actually, talking about what his chiropractor said, that basically, especially back in the heyday, that he was going through a car accident every night playing a set with Sevendust behind the drums.
Oh, yeah. And I used to have to massage his forearms before he went on. And his forearm looked like an average person's calf.
Yeah.
The muscle, and it was like trying to knead concrete.
Yeah.
And he was he's beat himself up playing that instrument. But he's very unique and fun to watch.
100%.
Great drummer. Horrible at returning text messages, but great drummer.
I had him on the show too, and we actually got into a very long personal conversation about the ups and downs of a music career. The broken relationships, trying to raise a family, health struggles, obviously managing the egos in a band, the pressure of songwriting, making poor decisions with record labels and managers and agents. It's once you go from your garage, right? Once you go from humping your friend Dana's gear in your rusty Chevy van,
yeah,
and you get a record deal and you become a band and you get into this machine, it gets so much more complicated so quickly. And trying to strip it back to the basics, to be able to have that group of people around you that you can trust, to be able to get into whatever headspace you need to be able to write music and to be able to manage your money, not overindulge with booze and drugs, to not get yourself in legal trouble. I mean, it's a hard road to navigate this kind of career.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's why a lot of people, I see a lot of roadies that fail at all that stuff, but they keep working too, which makes me think, well, I've seen that guy do some stupid stuff, but I don't know. I just try to keep my head on my shoulders, and as a tech, we're that person's right-hand man.
Right.
It's like you're not only a technician, sometimes you're a therapist. There's always lots of infighting in bands. Most bands I've ever been involved in, except one, when I toured with Hoobastank for a little while, those guys just seem to have their stuff together. I didn't see any fighting. They'd all share one room, smaller than this, hook up a PlayStation and play, video games till they went on. But with a lot of big bands, there's always something going on.
Well, especially if you've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. And
you work a lot with Aerosmith. They've been a band for 52 years. It's like after a while.
Yeah, and I was lucky to get that break. After I had done the Vi tour, the very next day, I got called, and 2 days later, I went out and did a year with Dream Theater. So my first 2 tours were these big drum kits, 2 well-known mics, drumming, and
yeah, because this was obviously Portnoy's era with Dream Theater before Mangini joined Dream Theater.
Yeah, Mike being the original
drummer,
and and I did that for a year. That was tough, and then
you got thrown into it.
I did.
2 of the most prolific, technical, highly esteemed drummers in all of drumming.
Yep, and
they were your first 2 gigs.
Yeah, and that's why my hair fell out. No, they were tough gigs, and and then after that, there was one more Vi tour I did. We did a tour, and then I did the Sevendust, and what I call my big break, which has been my favorite band I've worked for. I got called to do Stone Temple Pilots in early 2000, and so I spent 2000 till the end of 2002 with them when they had their break. But their music to me, I mean, I love those guys.
Yeah.
All their albums, their songwriting, because Robert and Dean, they grew up listening to the same stuff I did, all the 70s stuff. So, and you can see that and hear it in their music, So
I had Dean on the show, and we talked a lot about, there's examples of brothers in rock and roll, right? Sometimes it goes well. In a case like Oasis and the Black Crowes for a bit, it
didn't go well.
It doesn't go well. But the idea of being in a band with your brother, when you talk about managing the egos, navigating success, I would think that on the positive side, you can always trust that person because it goes beyond the band, that it's family.
Yeah, you would assume that family has each other's back.
Right.
But
if it goes wrong, because I think anybody can attest that they've had a problem with a family member.
Oh, yeah.
And now you can't get away from this person because your entire livelihood is wrapped up in them.
Yeah, and that's got to be like walking into hell every day.
Exactly.
It is. It's.
If I had to be in a band with half my family, the band would have broken up a long time ago.
Yeah, you would have been like the Partridge Family. Everybody needs Reuben Kincaid, though.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So when you go from setting up these highly technical drum sets for people like Mangini, Portnoy, you're going out on these world tours. For somebody that doesn't understand, and you've alluded to it a little bit, but I want to go and I want to start from the beginning and explain to people that don't understand. And I asked Frank Sgambellone the same kind of question. Doors for us are at 6. Music starts at 7. Curfew's 11. Show's over. We sit in traffic, go home, get up, and go to work the next day.
Yeah.
That is not your time schedule at all.
No, and well, there's a lot of people that have it worse off. Like being an instrument tech, we're called backline. A lot of people call us back wine because there might be some complaining, but you come in, you're not the first person in.
Right.
They come in, they mark out the floor, they're bringing in sound, lights, And
so let's do that. Let's go through the timeline of a load in so that people kind of understand, because I did this with Frank a little bit too. So what time do the trucks roll into the dock?
Well, that depends on the tour.
Okay.
So if you have, I think the biggest tour I've been on was like 22 trucks, Aerosmith Kiss. So you're loading in, sometimes you're pre-rigging the day before.
Okay.
You know, people have to go in and hang all the points, for these massive light truss, sound.
So somebody goes in and takes chalk and marks the floor.
Yeah, they mark up.
And right above those marks is where they're going to hang the chain motors.
The motors, yep.
That are going to hold the trussing,
yeah,
which holds the lights and the banners and the props and sometimes the pyro and the projection screens and the LED screens and the PA. So when you go into a show, the next time you go into a concert and you walk in, look up and look at what everything is being held by. And if you look really closely, you're going to see steel cables with burlap sacks over I-beams and all these little chain motors and the chains coming down holding all of that stuff. So for anybody that just is not exposed to any of this at all, I encourage you to look at the part of the show that it's like watching a magician.
Yeah.
There's the flashbang of what they want you to look at, and then there's what's really going on. So don't look at the production and the shiny lights. Look at the dirty part up in the ceiling.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, because when you're not in there, that's a pretty empty ceiling up there.
Right.
It's pretty much just grid and metal.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I spend a lot of time looking up. I'm pretty trained. I watch the drummer,
right,
like a hawk, pretty good. But there's times if you have moving components above you, like on the Aerosmith Vegas thing, we had this giant A that came down floating over the drums, and it's right above you as it's coming down, and you're kind of looking up and
hope those riggers weren't hung over.
Yeah, I have my morbid thoughts. I'm like, well, what if this thing comes down? Is it going to hit me? Am I going to be able to pull him out?
Yep.
And you think about that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's happened. There's been accidents. There's been stage collapses. A friend of mine, Aiden, he was on the Metallica bus crash in Europe.
Oh, wow.
And he was trapped. Him and Cliff.
Wow.
I mean, it's scary, you think about that. I've been in some minor bus accidents. I've seen a tire come off a truck and just miss. It was bouncing towards us, being in the jump seat, and it just missed coming through the windshield and hit right above the driver. But if it was 2 feet lower,
it would have gone right through the windshield.
And probably wouldn't be here because it would have killed the driver. And
it's not like the tire off a Toyota.
No,
a semi tire is steel radials, heavy, big, and moving fast.
Yeah, you don't realize it. And I've got stuck in mountains in Vancouver in the snow and on tours. We've been locked out of a bus that malfunctioned. We had to send the skinniest guy through the driver window after we broke it. But that's one job, they wouldn't have volunteered me for. I wouldn't fit.
So those trucks roll in.
Yeah, they roll in, but you could be dumping as early as 6 a.m. sometimes. Average tour, I would say, would probably start dumping at 7:30, 8. They would get up, mark the floor, start dumping the trucks. If it is a big tour, sometimes they'll build a stage. You have a rolling stage, so you'll be on one end of the arena while they're building the lights and sound down the other end. So you're able to get all the band gear forked up onto the deck, and you can start building in place. And then it's pretty cool to see they get all the local help. When you're ready to push down, everybody gets on. It reminds me of like how they built the pyramids. You got like 40 people pushing this stage full of band gear down into the correct spot. But that keeps you working. I would say the average time we would start setting up though is like 10 a.m. on backline.
Yep.
But there's tours, like I did Josh Groban a lot, and we'd be in earlier than that, because we had to be up and ready for a full run through with a local orchestra at 2:00, because
he's not touring with an orchestra. So he was, every place he went, he had a local orchestra come in. So you got to rehearse every day with new people.
Yeah. So that's the musical director, and they had to do, that's a busy tour to be on. But again, that's something totally different from a rock tour that I've done that I enjoyed, because Josh is, a lot of people just don't know him. He's a funny guy, and his music, it's different and it's nice and quiet. You could have
He's a lot more of a rock guy than I think people realize.
Yeah, he is, and he's got the same humor I do. You know, I had the first show I was doing with him. He says, "I hear you're the funny guy." He goes, "Tell me a joke," and I go, "Listen, the ones I know aren't appropriate." So I told him this pretty sick joke, and he doubles over laughing, and he goes, "How am I supposed to go out and sing a love song after that?" But I like touring with him too. But pretty much every band I've worked for, I've liked.
Yeah.
You know, to a point. You know.
Well, I tell people all the time, because people always ask me, because I spend so much time with the artists they love. You know, they always want to know who the nicest person was, but more often than not, they want to know who the biggest asshole was. And I always tell them, like, it's few and far between that they're an asshole to me, because I'm not doing anything for them to be mad at me.
Yeah.
You know, that I'm there most of the time to help them sell concert tickets, sell their albums, to promote them. So there's really no reason to be mad at me.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, the rigors of the road, someone might see a rock star, quote unquote,
yeah,
in a bad mood or a bad day, and that they're going to judge that whole person on this one interaction. You know,
everybody's had a bad day. Everybody doesn't feel good.
Yeah,
it happens.
It's stressful. I mean, can you swear on this podcast?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Well, there's some legendary assholes out there. I'm not going to name drop, but my friends have worked for them. I've worked for a few, and they're known to be so difficult. You know, nobody wants to be around them. You know,
I've only had a couple interactions with people that were negative, and I think one of them was just massive ego, and I think the other one was speaking from addiction, and that they were just in the throes of it, and that, you know.
Yeah, the addiction's tough. I mean, I've been around a lot of, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the Aerosmith guys, you know, in the past have battled it. This Scott with STP, you know, rest in peace. He was always, no matter what shape he was in, though, he put on a show.
Oh, 100%.
And it used to blow me away. He would just kind of flip a switch and go into automatic mode.
Yeah.
And his stage persona, his moves, the way he interacted, you know, it would always amaze me.
You could tell he was doing what he was born to do. It's like a guy like that's not going to be a welder. And no disrespect to welders, but like he was just born to be that performer. That's just what he was supposed to be.
Yeah, there's certain people that are rock stars without trying to be.
Yes.
Like in the old days, I always used to say Jim Morrison, Bon Scott, those two guys, they're rock stars without trying to be.
Keith Moon.
Yeah, Moon. Moon was out there.
He wasn't going to be a first grade teacher.
Oh, no. But,
you know,
but just the way those guys acted on stage and unique, you know, for the time. So they weren't emulating anybody.
Yeah.
They were just doing what came natural and being themselves.
Yeah.
You know, as far as drummers, though, it's like there's a lot of drummers that there's only so much you can do with a drum kit.
Yeah.
You know? So you got people that everybody borrows from everybody if they can pull it off.
Right.
You know, but like Morgan, he was one of the most, you know, unique guys I had teched for.
Yeah.
Just as far as the way he played. You know, but everybody else was pretty much standard players, minus Mangini, you know.
Yeah.
And Portnoy was great drummer too. Mike Portnoy's memory was insane. You know, as far as he would know so many songs with all these different bands he's been in.
Right.
And that's like when Mangini, the stuff he can do with all his odd time polyrhythmic stuff and stuff I don't understand.
Yeah.
I just know what he did just, you know, blew my socks off, you know. And it's just, you know, and they're down to earth guys that, you know, we all hang out together when we can.
Yeah.
You know, we do the Hammerhead Hoedown, we call it, down our buddies every summer. So Sean goes to it, Dana, Pat, Gary, and we just have a good day hanging out. And,
Which a lot of guys like that don't get a chance to do because they're always gone.
Yeah, it is.
That's why, like, my first question whenever I interview a band is, where are you right now? Because half the time they don't even know. Yeah,
a lot of times that happens, especially on a big tour, you know.
Yeah.
If it's hectic, a lot of bands have to, like Aerosmith, we don't do more than, we do one show couple days off.
Yeah.
You know, Steven needs a vocal rest.
Yep.
So you have a lot of downtime, but then you'll do a smaller tour where you're doing 5-6 shows in a row, you know, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
Not as glamorous, you know, but it's still, I still like doing what I do.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's something that comes up on the show all the time. I think rock fans in particular really realized how much we needed to be able to go to shows when it got taken away from us with COVID. That it's something that is just so ingrained in our lifestyle, that it's something we missed so much, that when it was gone, it was like, wait, I want to be with my people. That's where I go to feel normal. That's where I go to experience the music I love, to get together with my friends and have that shared experience. And when it's gone, it was like, oh. And I think more than other genres of music, rock music is really dependent on that live experience.
Yeah, it is, because it just seems other genres now have surpassed the average rock show.
Yeah.
You know, like the pop stuff and the country stuff we touched on earlier. I'm not fans of that stuff, but these people are selling out stadiums.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
and it's stuff I wouldn't bat an eyelash at listening to. But, you know, I respect them.
Yeah.
All the power to them. It's just, I'm not going to go to it.
Yeah, it's not my bag.
Yeah, it's not. And I wouldn't even know any of the newer bands, really.
There's some really
sad.
good ones that are coming out. There's some really great new music coming out. But it's a weird time in music. Technology has changed so much. I mean, look at us. You know,
a couple of dinosaurs.
Yeah. No, but I mean, being an MCHQ, whereas you've known me for my whole career being in a radio station, and it's like podcasting is growing so fast that the whole industry is changing now. It's nuts.
It is. And like you said, you can make a living from your living room.
Yeah.
Nowadays, or your basement.
Yeah. People are doing it every day.
Yeah. And it's all the power to them, you know?
But we still, like, thankfully the live shows are back now, right? So we were talking about, like, the load-in process and getting the stage and the lights rigged and the PA and all of that. If you go back and listen to the Frank Sgambellone episode, he really went into detail about the process of being a front of house sound engineer, being a monitor guy, being in charge of the sound that the band actually hears. So now it's time for the back line to get put up. And you as a drum tech, I want to go through, it's not just setting up a set of drums for you.
No.
And you touched on it a little bit about the needs and wants and the preferences of the drummer that you're working for. So kind of run through that process for me, because you got to do it every day.
Yeah. So basically, you know, some tours I help set up the drum riser. Some tours it's, you know, the carpenter set it up. But as far as setting up, I always get my road cases around me. They always want to give you a local to help. Sometimes they force it on you. So I just have that person open up my road cases, hang out. If I need you, I'll let you know, because I like to do it myself.
Yeah.
So the first thing you always start with is a kick drum. You know, you attach the pedal, a double pedal, then the hi-hat and snare. I call that kind of like the infield, because that's the drummer's main area he's going to be playing.
Right.
Is hi-hat, snare, kick. And then you add all the toms, stands.
It's like the Ringo drum set. Like, strip it down. It's like, that's the bare essentials of a drum set.
Yeah, and Ringo got the 4-piece kit.
Yeah.
A couple crashes. I mean, that's a miracle gig to get as far as a drum tech. That don't seem to happen too often.
No,
but you set that up, and if you got to change heads, you know, sometimes I'll change heads before, you know, if you got downtime before you get put up on deck, you know, I'm changing heads out back, cleaning cymbals, you know, just kind of getting a jump on anything I can so I'm not under the gun the later we get, because sometimes, you know, setup runs late and you're not getting the stage until later. And you're still expected to have a band come in for a sound check, and there's no excuse.
Yeah, the show is up against a curfew.
It is.
So you can't make the show go later.
No, and doors you can push a little bit.
Yeah.
Which has happened, you know. So I'll get the kit up and running, then I'll mic up the kit, run the loom. I like to be neat. So a lot of sound guys, like the crew tech, you know, they won't be as neat as I will setting up a drum loom to hide all the cables, to make them go up neat. Just stuff like that. I'm a little bit anal about that. And but I'm pretty good at, when I've been with a drummer for a while, of knowing exactly, you memory lock all your stands, and the angles stuff's supposed to go. But there's guys that'll tell me, look, you nail this kit every day, but I'm going to come in and move something just because I'm a fidgeter.
Right.
And he goes, don't take it. I go, I'm not taking anything personal. I go, you're the boss. You do whatever you want. So once you get it all set up, and then you kind of wait, and they start ringing out the monitors, all the sound guys, all the stage monitors. A lot of guys nowadays have in-ear monitors. Some of the old school bands have actual speakers. Like Joe Perry won't wear in-ear monitors. So you have to have wedges everywhere. So they voice all those out, and then usually the first thing you start with is the kick drum. Front of house guy, I want to start with the kick. So you got to hit the kick a bunch of times, snare, hat, go through everything that's mic'd. Then play a little beat for them, and then they'll start with bass or keys or guitar. And then, sometimes they want a crew jam, so we do a little bit of a crew jam. And, once they're satisfied that everything sounds good, you're pretty much set until showtime, or until when the band walks on stage. And when the band gets up there, they want the same thing every day.
Right.
They want to put in their ears and say, this sounds golden, just like it did last time, But there's also venues that can affect the sound of drums. Obviously, they're wood and metal. So if it's colder, they can be sharp. If it's hot, the heads can detune, kind of like hitting pudding. So you have to kind of be up on it, And every guy likes a different sound, Like I did some stuff this past year with Todd Zuckerman from Styx, who's one of the craziest, insane drummers on the planet. But he liked his snare drum very loose. And that's what I equated it to. I said it's like hitting a tub of pudding. But the sound guy out there loves the way it sounds, and he can get a great sound for the audience.
Right.
And it's more, and Todd was like, I'm not a fan of it, but it appeases Cookie, the sound guy. Let him, let's keep him happy.
Because when you're talking about a snare drum head, a tight snare drum head is what you would hear in a marching band.
Yeah.
The snap, 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 pop, 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 like.
Yeah, and most of them are tight.
Yeah.
But not as tight as marching drum stuff, but depending. But everybody likes it different, A drum is only going to sound good in a small window, whether it's a tom or a floor tom, If you crank it up too tight, it's not going to have any mid-body to it. It's kind of going to be like hitting a trash can cover, ding, ding.
Yeah.
You want the warmth, and the depth of it. So it's tricky. That's the hardest part of the gig is tuning the drums for me. I'm pretty good at it. There's guys better than me, though, but I just try my best and seem to keep people happy.
We see at the end of shows all the time, the drummer always comes out and flings the heads of the drums like frisbees into the arena. So when you talk about changing the heads, is that dependent on the drummer, how often you have to do that?
Yeah, it depends on how hard they hit. So I've worked for drummers that aren't the hardest hitters, but some guys destroy heads in one show. So you have to change them out for the next show. And a lot of times, in the past, guys would sign them, fling them. Some guys wouldn't want to do that, so I'd give them to a local. I'd ask the local crew, hey, anybody here a drummer? These heads are still great. They'll be cool in your kit for a while, but, and you can get away with using, like on Aerosmith, I would change the snare every 2 shows for Joey, and the toms, probably every 3. But even though I could get away with going more, these guys all have endorsements with the big companies, and you get the product free, most of it. But I would never abuse it and just to change them for the hell of it. I'm not a waste guy, I'm like, these drums still sound good. I'm not going to change the heads. And most guys are like, yeah, whatever you think, man. Yeah, I trust you. So,
but you also don't want to have a head break in the middle of a show. No. Because then you're going to work in a big way.
The drum tech's biggest fear is breaking a kick drum during a show. And because that's a kick drum is a difficult thing to change. And that only happened once in my career, and it was with Morgan. I remember it was a nightmare. I forget where we were, but his pedal broke, his beater, and the shaft, which is metal, went through the head. It was a 2-ply head. So it only wrecked the first ply, and I was able to take some gaff tape, which is
the savior of all things rock and roll.
It is. It's the super glue of wounds. So, I was able to get it at least fixable, to finish out the show. But that is a nightmare. So much, in fact, on Aerosmith that, Steven brought it up to us, a few runs ago in Vegas. He's like, what's going to happen if you break a kick? So now I have an extra kick all mic'd up internally, on standby near me, in case, and you have to be able to slide that kick drum out, without interfering the rest of the kit.
So that's what I was going to say. So normally on a drum kit that somebody's got in their garage, all of the other drums are attached to the kick drum with stands and stuff. So
yeah.
But on a professional drum kit, there's stands, cages.
Yeah, most guys I tech for, we don't mount anything. There are mounts on certain drums where you can have 2 mounts for your two rack toms.
Yeah.
We use snare baskets. If it's just got one ply, you use a snare stand, or you use a rack system so they're floating above it. That's the ideal thing, and you try to keep everything away from that kick drum in case you have to slide it out. It's a nightmare if it happens.
Yeah.
They're going to have to go to the guitar solo or something.
Yeah, the guy like Steven Tyler can riff with the audience for a while and do some crowd interaction stuff, but you're still stalling. And to go back to what we're talking about, they're not moving curfew.
No.
Because you're getting into union labor costs, and if it's an outdoor thing like Fenway, they only have permits to make that much noise to a certain time in that neighborhood. So all of a sudden now, because the pyro, the lights, the projection, all of that's dependent on the song, the longer it takes for Magee behind the drum set to swap out that kick drum, you're screwing around with the whole show.
Yep, and you don't want all eyes on you. It's happened to me. I mean, with snares, people break a snare, you got to do a quick change.
Yeah.
And just stuff's going to break when you're a drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, the nature of that instrument is taking a beating.
Yeah.
So, but some guys don't hit as hard and stuff lasts. So you kind of get comfortable knowing nothing's going to be getting shattered, or you're going to have to run out there. Most of the time I make an appearance is to fix a microphone that's flopped or fallen or something like that.
I talked to a mutual friend of ours, Chad Brandolini from Vader Percussion.
Oh, yeah.
And he was on the show with Mikey Wengren.
Mikey,
talking about the specifics of drumsticks, designing drumsticks for a specific drummer, and how hard the drummer hits, the kind of sound they want, working with the drum heads and kind of getting that combination. And then there's always the broken drumstick thing, right? Like we've all seen, it's a little dangerous for the drummers to be hucking pieces of wood out into the crowd, but also a fan of that drummer, like you want the drumstick.
Oh yeah, everybody likes drumsticks.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've gotten hit in the face multiple times with broken sticks sitting in my position. Something will shatter and all of a sudden it's flying at you, hit you between the eyes. Often to the point where I'm like, I should probably wear safety goggles.
You probably should.
And I think about it a lot because, I've been hit so many times.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a story with Tico Torres from Bon Jovi. He broke a stick once. He told me and Joey, we were talking to him, and it flung up and stuck in his neck, the sharp point. And it was kind of wedged into his neck, and he said he had his tech give him a piece of tape.
Gaff tape.
He taped it on and finished the show until they could pull it out. It wasn't like a life or death thing, but it was enough that it stuck inside.
But he got
of him.
impaled.
Yeah, he got impaled a little bit.
So who in your career, who broke the most sticks? Was it Morgan?
I would probably say Morgan, but when I started with Morgan, he hadn't switched over to Vader yet, which Chad Brando. I've known Chad a long time, and he's been great. Anytime I've done a Vader guy, I live 12 minutes from the factory.
Right.
So I get to go over there, and he hooks us up amazingly. And I think they make the best stick out there. But Morgan probably broke the most sticks.
Just because he hits so hard.
Yeah, and he plays a double butt end stick. So he doesn't have a tapered. Most drumsticks have a shoulder that tapers down to like an acorn bead. Some have plastic on them, but and guys use aluminum sticks like Tommy Lee, Lars. They have these ahead. They're made out of aluminum, so you could get a year using a drumstick.
Wow!
But there's something about wood,
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, conversely, like when a show ends, I always call it the baby bird syndrome, the front row. I jump up there, and the first thing I usually start doing after I do all my small work is taking off the cymbals. And everybody in the front row is asking for sticks. So I've learned just to keep my head down and ignore them, and they're like, drum guy, sticks,
drum guy.
And I just ignore them, unless it's something I've given sticks to, I give them out.
Yeah.
But a lot of tours, you only get so many.
Right.
And so, and I've been called an asshole from the crowd for not giving somebody a stick. And like, I don't have any broken ones. And,
I don't want to give out the brand new ones. We're going to need them.
Yeah. But I've always given, especially kids or people, if I see people in wheelchairs or handicapped, I'll go above and beyond just to get them something, because normally they don't have a chance, to stand up or and ask for stuff. And so that makes me, happy.
Yeah.
Giving people stuff.
When you are working with different drummers, depending on the tour, right? You go from a band like Hoobastank that's just in a room playing video games before the show to, Kiss and Aerosmith, when you've got projection, inflatables, backdrops, pyro especially.
Yeah.
There's all this going on. It comes up all the time. It doesn't matter the generation of the band. Spinal Tap holds true. Spinal Tap is law. It happens to everyone. You're going to either A, get lost backstage in Cleveland, or B, get trapped in the pod on stage, or C, the Stonehenge prop coming down that's not what you expected. You have got to have some really good Spinal Tap stories about things that have gone wrong on tours.
Well, most of the time, being a drum guy, I'm on stage waiting for the band to get brought up. So I don't really see a lot. Like, I know on Aerosmith, we had a guy specifically that would tape out the floor with fluorescent gaff tape with arrows right in stage, so pretty much anybody could find the stage.
Because it seems ridiculous, but those arenas, they all start to look the same. The bands have to have signs to tell them where their dressing rooms are, to tell them where catering is, to tell them where the production office is. Yeah. There's colored tape and arrows because they're just these concrete tunnels. You don't know where the hell you're going.
Yeah.
That's why the Cleveland thing's so friggin' funny, because it happens all the time.
Well, when I had morphed into Joey's road manager, like on Aerosmith, he had his kid come do some tech work for him, which kind of left me gigless. So that's when I worked for Steven for 6 months as his road assistant, personal assistant. And but then I came back to do Joey as his road manager. They call us road manager, personal assistant, though. And we were down in South America. You always get the police escorts, which are crazy, because these guys are on motorcycles flying.
I know.
And you're in a convoy. And so that something happened with Joey. He couldn't leave with the convoy. We had to leave later. And we drove around this arena. The guy didn't speak English. My Spanish wasn't any good. He couldn't find a way into the venue. And all the tempers were flaring back there. Joey's kind of like, what the hell's going on here? Does this guy know where he's going? And, so that took like 40 minutes.
Oh my God.
Of circling. And there's a sea of people outside the stadium because they're all going to the show. And so that was probably my most Spinal Tap finding the gig type of thing. But I've seen motorcycle cops hit cars and guy flying over the hood. They've wiped out. It's insane to be part of a police escort. I don't know if you've ever been involved in one.
Yeah, it's kind of cool too. You're like, is this what it's like to be the president? Like, you don't go to stop at lights. Like, this is nice.
Yeah, it's cool. And then multiply it times 10 in South America,
right?
Because it's even nuttier.
Oh yeah.
Those guys are crazy.
South American rock and metal fans are
they're the best. They're the most insane people in a good way. They love
passionate.
The band. They'll camp out. I got pictures and videos somewhere of thousands of fans outside the band's hotel with flags, and they write chalk, all over the ground. And Steven, when I was with him, he would go out there and he'd spend like an hour just going down the line, signing stuff, taking pictures. And so a lot of these guys are good to the fans when they can be.
Yeah.
It's hard all the time.
Well, they're maintaining schedules. And for a guy like Steven Tyler, it also comes up in a lot of the interviews I do with the singers that talking's the worst thing for your voice.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if you're a singer like Steven Tyler, kind of hard for Aerosmith to play without you.
Yeah, and it's not a secret that he likes to talk.
Yeah.
So,
which for somebody that interviews people for a living, love it.
Oh, yeah.
I got his harmonica up there.
Oh, I should have brought you one.
I'll
get you one. I have some from just in the past. He'd throw one to me, or they get left in the drum riser. So I just throw them in the drum work box and
just keep them.
Yeah, I give them to people here and there.
Well, that harmonica that's up there by the picture, he gave me a harmonica lesson on the air. But I went to Toys R Us and bought little kid first act harmonicas. And that's what he gave me the harmonica lesson on, with these little kid, this is my first instrument harmonicas. The audio's hilarious of him giving me the harmonica lesson. But at the end of it, he goes, this thing actually sounds pretty good. Can I keep it? So at some point somewhere, Steven Tyler took a little kid's harmonica, took it with him. Who knows if he ever used it recording something.
He probably still has it. He's probably the most insanely talented person, though, that I've ever... I mean, his ear...
Yeah.
He can hear, like doing Aerosmith rehearsals, he'll hear something, the band's just trying to get through a song, but he'll stop it. Hey, you hit the wrong note. And he's always right.
Yeah. Which just pisses everybody off, I'm sure.
It's like, let us just do the song.
And he's a drummer.
Yeah.
So it's like and that happens a lot too, that there are a lot of lead singers that come from a drumming background.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're not blissfully unaware of your world. He knows exactly what's going on with you because he's a drummer too.
Oh, yeah. And he definitely knows. And, he's, he rode Joey hard, through the years. That's not known in the industry, but just because, I don't know, I think he's such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
But
you don't get to that level of success without being rubber stamped difficult.
Yeah.
Because you've got to have a vision, and it's all you're the face of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it sucks, it's on you. So you want it to be great.
Oh yeah. And he's had pretty much 3 different eras of his voice too.
Right.
We always joke in our circle with the first album voice, which was more nasally.
Yeah.
That's my favorite era. The first 4 Aerosmith albums to me are the best. I mean, nothing touches that, but they've continued to have a career, doing songs like that, stuff from the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
So they have their fan base, but they have so many songs, it's hard to appease everybody with a set list because you can only play so many songs.
Yeah.
If it was up to me, I wouldn't hear anything after 80, So I'm not good with doing a set list. But.
Yeah, and all the big hits came way after, like the big commercial hits.
Yeah, the commercial hits. Yeah.
All the big ballads, the Armageddon soundtrack stuff, all that stuff is just so...
Oh, yeah, and it's huge. Angel, Crazy.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to appease everybody.
What about on-stage stuff, the Trapped in the Pod, Spinal Tap stuff, the big technical... getting stabbed in the neck with drumsticks. Like, what have you been part of on stage that was just like, oh, shit?
Well, I've stopped people from running on stage before. I clotheslined one guy on STP. I didn't mean to, but, he went ass over tea kettle up on the... I just kind of stuck my arm out at the last minute, but I don't know. I mean, I've seen musicians, Steven falling off the stage at Sturgis. And they brought him back to my world. I had a towel, so he had to, his head was bleeding, shoulder messed up. And in Japan, Steven fell off a stage.
It happens all the time. I mean, Dave Grohl obviously famously broke his leg. Like, no matter how much bright tape you put on the edge of the stage, these guys are up there sometimes 12 feet off the ground with all those lights and pyro in their faces.
Oh, yeah. And Tom, Tom's tripped over Brad's pedal board backing up. Sometimes you go down, so much confetti on a plexiglass stage. Like on Aerosmith, we always have ramps going out into the crowd. And when at the end when they blow the confetti. I've seen people take spills just slipping. They go right on their ass. It's more of an embarrassing thing.
Yeah.
But it happens, But I don't know. I mean, I haven't really seen too much Spinal Tap stuff,
Like when I was at the Aerosmith Extreme show at Fenway this past summer.
Yeah.
And when they put the piano up on the monster.
Yeah.
And you could tell that Steven was having issues with something. Either the band couldn't hear him, he couldn't hear the band. And everybody that I was with at the show were like, Spinal Tap lives.
Yeah, I guess that would be a bit of a Spinal Tap moment, but we never really got to rehearse that properly.
Yeah.
With the lack of time we had for that show. But that was a good show, though.
Oh, it was great.
And seeing the Extreme guys get to open and...
I mean, just seeing shows at Fenway, even though they've been doing it for a while now, is still a trip to me.
Yeah.
And then to see local guys be able to go and play in that Coliseum, that legendary venue.
Oh, yeah. As a Boston native,
right?
You get goosebumps.
Yeah.
Being on that hallowed ground.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen Billy Joel there a couple times. I got to sit on the side of the stage. So that was my only time working a show, was the Aerosmith thing.
Oh,
it was
okay.
Great to be there, though. And
yeah.
It was a tough few days of
yeah.
just, it gets hectic is the word I would use.
And that's not a venue that's built for sound. To go back to what you were talking about, like there are venues, old theaters specifically, that were built for acoustics that sound amazing.
Yeah.
But when you start the Old Garden, when you start going into these big sporting arenas where it's all concrete and all metal and it just doesn't, it's not meant for sound, and trying to make a venue as odd shaped as Fenway sound good.
Yeah, it's tough.
That's when you're lucky you're just the drum guy.
Oh, yeah.
And you're not the sound guy.
Well, John Shipp runs front of house, so he had his hands full for that.
Yeah, I bet.
He's a great front of house guy, but it's a difficult thing to try to chase sound in a big stadium.
Yeah.
Like that, so. But overall, though, I think people liked the show.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to see Aerosmith celebrating that, even though it had been postponed. I talked to Pat Badger before it happened, and he was like, that date's been circled on my calendar. Like, I can't wait to be able to get up on that stage. It's going to be a total trip to play a show with Aerosmith at Fenway.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what?
Oh, yeah. And Pat too, had gotten, obviously, Pat's buddy, Jim Meridian, they build the basses. And Pat had given Tom a bass years ago, and Tom played it a lot, and it just been sitting in the lockup. So Pat asked me, he goes, you think Tom would, give me back that bass just for sentimental reasons?
Right.
Because Jim had passed away and it was very close to Pat. And so I just approached Tom about it, and he was very cool. And I go, Pat wants to play this on Fenway. And so Tom graciously let him have it.
Wow.
Pat got it. He used it in Maine. And, I was with Tom on the side of the stage. He was watching Pat play it. So for Pat, that was a great moment.
Right.
But just, I don't know. And those guys, I was with them backstage right before they went on, because I've worked with Extreme a bunch here and there. I know those guys. And, we had given Gary his new rock pole. I don't know. You know how he has two mic stands?
Yeah.
One without the bass?
Yeah.
So me and Dana and
that's what you call
my
it,
friend
the rock
Nicole,
pole?
he calls it the rock pole. It's tribute to Freddie.
Gotcha.
So we had one. I found a guy. He made it out of carbon fiber.
Wow.
Screws together like a pool cue, and it's very light. And he got to use it and loved it. So that was his delayed birthday gift. Took a while to make.
Talking about local crews and psychotic like music and rock fans. Gary, we're talking about Gary Sharon from Extreme. He told me this crazy story about touring in Japan once, that they did sound check and Gary likes to perform barefoot, and had asked if somebody had like an area rug that they could put in front of his microphone because he was barefoot. And he said they left to like go to dinner after sound check and came back, and the Japanese local crew had taken everything off the stage, fully carpeted the stage, and put everything back exactly where it was because Gary had just asked for an area rug.
I believe it. Japanese, that's my favorite place to go. I went 7 times in 9 years, and the last time I was there was with Extreme in 2005. But I haven't been back since. But their crew, they take pictures of stuff, so they can replicate it. They're diehard. It's in the crowds though, they clean up their own mess.
What?
Yeah, when you watch a crowd, they're very polite to clap, and as soon as the show ends, they file out single row, take their trash with them, throw it away. The arena, it's as neat as when they came in.
Really?
Oh, they're the best. I call them the best fans as far as being most behaved and polite. They are. It's cool to do a show there.
Wow.
And your shows, you're usually done by 8 o'clock because everybody's got to they go after work. Sometimes you're going on at 6 o'clock, 6 or 7.
They don't do the late night shows, 10, 11 o'clock at night in Japan?
No, I've never done one that late.
Really?
Yep.
Because everybody's got to go to work the next day?
Yeah, they got to get the train home and work.
Wow.
But I've had some of my best fun moments there. Just like I said, the joke was there's two big things in Japan when I'm there, Mount Fuji and Mount Magee. And that's when my alter ego would come out, when I used to I'd have a few too many drinks. And I think one time I had alcohol poisoning.
Oh.
But you still got to work.
Right.
We got in, literally I got in at 10 or 6 in the morning and we had to leave at 6.
Oh.
And I only did that a handful of times in my career. Now I wouldn't even dream of it,
Yeah, because you're just drunk.
I don't drink anymore.
Right.
I never had an issue with it. I just gave it up. There's no sense,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, you've worked with so many legendary artists, and for a fan, you get what's on the music. You maybe follow them on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, which is more newer access. And then you get the live show. That's the access you get. I get a little bit more of that access because I get to actually sit down and talk to them and interview them and sometimes introduce them on stage or hang out with them a little backstage. But you're around the artists on the days off. You're traveling on the planes with them. You're in the same hotels. You're on the buses. So talk to me about the artists that you travel with and have worked for that are like the biggest practical jokers, or like some of the ridiculous moments of going out on an off day and sightseeing. What's it like to be on a tour with a band when you're not playing?
Yeah, I think probably the most fun I ever had, though, was still that first tour with Vibe, because Mangini, as you know, is crazy. And we had Phil Bino, who's another Boston. He was playing bass. And the schedule was so rigorous that, we had jet lag a lot of times. We'd get invited to Sony dinners. Like in Taiwan, we had this dinner had like a 30-foot table that spun. So you could just spin the food in front of people. And me and Mike, we got into a giggle fit. And we have it on video, VHS. And when you lose it, when you're trying not to laugh, like Steve was getting aggravated. And when you're trying to contain a laugh, it makes it 100 times worse.
You can't.
And Phil had to get up from the table and leave because he was crying coming out of his eyes. And it was around the time Silence of the Lambs came out. And Mike was quoting parts of that. And it might be silly to the listener, but when you're involved in it, and
you're jet lagged, you're sleep deprived, you're in a place where you don't know a lot of people. There's booze around.
Oh yeah, and you're sleeping on floors of airports waiting for your flight. You get canceled. I've been stuck at an airport for 2 days once from ice storms trying to get home for Christmas. It's a lot. The travel takes it out on you. You know? It does, and especially the older you get. But
I've heard a lot of bands say, the money that I make isn't for the 2 hours on stage. It's for the 22 hours I'm not.
Oh, yeah. And there's no such thing as a day off on the road.
Right.
Because you're either traveling, if you're on a bus, I like being on a bus.
You can sleep good in those bunks on a bus?
Pretty good. I'm not claustrophobic, and I do pretty good sleeping. Like last summer, I went out with Stained, opening up for Korn. Sal was another great drummer. He was a drum tech. He was Stain's drum tech for 20 years, and he became the drummer. So he asked me to go out, and I'm like, yeah.
See, you should have learned how to play the drums, McGee.
I couldn't play that stuff. That's tough. That's tough stuff too.
Yeah.
But we got to go out, and we got COVID. Jonathan got COVID, and then 2 days later I had it for my first. I've had it 3 times now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the first time was pretty horrible. Second time mild, and then I got it in October in Cabo, doing Sammy's birthday shows.
Yeah.
And I came home with it.
Ugh.
That was tough, but you just get through it, the best you can. And I guess it's there. Like Aerosmith, we were testing for COVID every show day. So we would have to show up in the morning, get tested, get cleared, work. Other bands have kind of written it off by now.
Yeah.
I'm more of a kind of, I wish it was, you can't live in fear,
Right.
It's a real thing, obviously, but if you get it, you do what you got to do. And that's my motto,
I mean, there's people that have gotten it have been completely unscathed.
Yeah.
And then there's Dave from Jane's Addiction, the guitar player. He's got long COVID.
Oh, does he?
He's been suffering for over a year with long COVID. He can't tour.
Wow.
He's not even able to be in the recording studio from what I've been reading online and work on the new record. He's been dealing with it, and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't even know how.
It's so crazy.
It does. Have you had it?
No.
Oh, you haven't had it?
No.
It does definitely leave you, like my taste and smell never came back fully.
Really?
Yeah, I'm probably at about 40-50%.
Wow.
But the fogginess is real too.
Yeah,
It really,
COVID brain, they say.
Yeah, that is a real thing.
Yeah.
And it messed you up. It makes you feel like more old than you are because you can't remember. Like, who is that? You're trying to think of something, and I don't know. Maybe it's old age too, but we're getting up there.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of affects everybody differently. And I don't know why I haven't gotten it, because I've cared for family members that had it, that needed somebody to take care of them. And then, when I was able to get vaccinated, I was like, yeah, hook me up. Like, I've gotten so many vaccines from my trips overseas with the military. And I was just like, look, I don't know what was in any of those, so just give me the vaccine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm at this point.
Your insides are probably glowing anyway. So.
There's probably some Pentagon tracking chip in me or something. I don't know at this point.
Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not an anti-vax guy. I'm not one of those. And I don't like people being forced to take stuff either,
Yeah, it's just.
You got to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't affect me, don't.
Well, that's the thing, is that if it gets to the point where, large gatherings where all of a sudden everybody, I mean, like things like the measles and mumps are coming back because people don't even want to get the old vaccines. It's like, I don't even know what the mumps actually is, and I just know I don't want it.
I picture you wake up looking like the Elephant Man.
Yeah.
There's got to be bumps all over you.
Yeah, I don't want it. That I know.
I had chicken pox at 2 months old.
I had it when I was a kid too.
Yeah.
And my niece, we got into a conversation about the COVID vaccine, and she, we were talking, and I was like, well, you've never had chicken pox, right? And she was like, no, because she's in her early 20s, and she doesn't know anyone that her age that ever had it. And I was like, well, I had the chicken pox, and what happened when a kid in the neighborhood got chicken pox? Everybody's parents brought their kids over to catch the chicken pox. And she goes, did they call DSS? And I was like, DSS?
Oh, you rubbed their heads together.
Yeah, you wanted your kid to get chicken pox. And she was like, parents willingly gave their kids chicken pox. And I was like, yeah, because it was dangerous if you didn't get it when you were young.
Yeah.
If you got it when you were older, and they purposefully wanted you to get it, there wasn't a vaccine for it. That blew her mind. She thought
funny.
It was child abuse.
That just shows you the different era.
Yeah, 100%.
Of people our age, how we were. We'd be out the door at sunlight and come home at dusk.
Parents didn't know where we were.
No, building forts.
In the woods, lighting shit on fire.
Oh, yeah. Too many times. Parachuting from trees. We used to do that.
Yeah. Well, now I'm parachuting from planes, but I'm a little safer.
Not me. I wouldn't do that.
So you talk about Sammy Hagar and all of the other artists that you've worked with. In everybody that you've met, has anyone figured out the fountain of youth and is having a better time in their life than Sammy Hagar?
No.
I really think he's discovered the secret to life.
He has. I mean, he's 75 now. He looks great.
Yeah.
He likes to have a good time.
Yeah.
He's not going to do as many shows this year, I hear, but, they tell me he gets bored. He might add some here and there.
Yeah.
But I kind of went out there as a fill-in, probably did 12 to 15 shows with him. teching for Jason, whose dad was John Bonham.
Yeah.
So anytime.
Yeah, when you say Jason, like anytime I interview people and they start dropping first names, I'm always very quick to be like, Jason Bonham.
I wasn't trying to clang one, but
no, but like I just talked about I just interviewed Luke Spiller from the Struts a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about Queen, and he was like Brian, and I was like Brian May. Like I want to make sure people understand who you're talking about when you say Brian.
Oh yeah, you do, and it's just and Jason's a fun guy.
Yeah,
very jovial. Never called me by my nickname because
Did he always call you John?
No, my British friend who hired me. They're both British. He said, "This is Maggie." He called me Maggie. So every time I saw Jason, he would call me Maureen or Samantha. That was a funny one. He'd go, "Hello, Samantha." I can't do the British accent, but he was a fun guy to tech for. And, this past year, I had like 4 different bands that I feel teched for. So it was fun branching out and meeting new people.
Yeah. And especially when you have a career and you're good at what you do, people find out about you without you even knowing about it. Like, what's the most random call that you got? And you were like, how the hell did you even hear about me? How did you get my number?
I'm not sure on that, because I'd have to think. I mean, getting that STP call was cool.
Yeah.
Because I liked the band so much.
Yeah.
But then from that, we opened up for Aerosmith for the last 7 shows that the band was together. And I saw the guitar tech for Joe Perry when they were building, what's it on Lansdowne?
Oh, the House of Blues or the MGM Music Hall?
No, I think this was back in 2002.
Oh, so that was probably when they were converting Axis and Avalon into the House of Blues.
And I'd gone in to visit a roadie friend, and Joe's tech was in there. And I had just literally that day had these cheesy business cards made up. and I said, "Hey, Jim, I don't know if you remember me. I was a drum tech on STP." And he goes, "Oh, yeah. And so I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, the band's in town getting ready to record, Honkin' on Bobo."
Yeah.
And I go, "I'm the next town over, literally, if you need something." I gave him my card, and I was out doing a gig with Dana, one of his cover bands, and I got a call at like 11 at night. And they said, "Hey, so Joey's tech can't be here for the album, and we need a guy. Would you be interested in coming down and meeting him tomorrow?" And I almost fainted for that one.
Yeah.
Because that's top of the food chain.
Yeah.
And
especially being somebody that grew up in Massachusetts, to get the call from Joey Kramer from Aerosmith to go in the studio and work on a record.
Oh, yeah, and it was down Joe's house, Joe Perry's. So,
wow.
So I found myself in Duxbury the next day at 2, sitting on a stone wall. I met the roadies, and then you just see sports cars pulling in. And I had met Joey before, just out, but he didn't remember me.
Yeah.
And so we talked, and again, I think my humor helped get me that gig.
Yeah.
Because I made him laugh. Joey has a very infectious laugh.
Yeah, he does.
When you get him laughing, it'll make the room cackle. So I kind of, I did that, and there was some flip-flopping on whether I was going to go on tour with him, and eventually he decided to take me. So it was bumpy for a bit. He's a tough guy to get the feel for at first, but now, we're like a right shoe and a left shoe together.
Right.
Just in life, and I talk to him every couple of weeks. He's doing pretty good.
Is he doing okay?
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff that has gone on, obviously, in his personal life, which kept him off of the Vegas residency shows for a while. So that's good that he's doing well.
Sad, but he's doing much better.
He is. Okay, that's good. He's, people have always asked me in a long radio career, like, did you ever slip and like swear? And one of the only times it ever happened was Joey came into the studio, and I had been on the air for years at that point when his coffee came out.
Oh, yeah. Rock and roast.
Yeah, and he and I were sitting in the studio just on the air talking about the band and whatever, just like you and I are now. And I forgot that I was on the radio, which never happens. And we're laughing and joking, and I was like, "Are you shitting me?" And Joey's face, because he knew we were on the radio, and for a split second, I forgot. And his face went blank. I realized what I had done, went diving for the dump button, and then that Joey Kramer laugh came out, and I was crying laughing because I couldn't believe I had let my guard down enough to swear on the air after all those years.
Did you get the dump button in time?
I think so, but I mean, you know.
Yeah. No, that's funny though. That's a good story.
You know, and
swear.
And it's one of the things that I had to get used to in the reverse with the podcast is that I got the headphones on, I'm sitting in front of the microphone, but we can swear now, which when you go on the radio, it's like, that's why I always ask my guests to wear headphones, because it is like a physical reminder that they're on the radio, because they're in front of microphones so often, able to say whatever they want, that the headphones kind of remind them, not with the podcast, but with the radio, like, hey, be careful.
Remember.
Yeah, exactly.
But even though you can swear, you know, you don't want to just be listening to F-bombs all interview. It has a time and a place.
Yeah.
You know?
It slips out every once in a while, but and they do say that people that swear a lot are higher in intelligence. So I must be wicked smart.
Wicked smart.
Yeah, because the swears come out.
Speaking of the Boston accent, going into the film genre, they always butcher it. Have you ever seen a movie that they didn't?
Even guys from Massachusetts.
Yeah, The Departed. The Departed, I think, who was it? Wahlberg was great in his role.
Yeah.
In The Departed. But everyone else, it's kind of, I don't know.
Well, because they move out of town.
Yeah.
And then they come back, and it's like.
I've been accused of being from Australia, down south. I mean, I have a kind of a slow drawl.
Yeah.
You know, but then I'll say the Boston words, Sharpie, water, park, you know, and people, there it is.
There it is. And for me, going to broadcasting school, like I learned to get rid of it. But if I get mad or drunk or both, the accent comes out in spades. You motherfucker! Like it comes out. And people are like, oh yeah, you are. Because people have been like, you're not from Boston. You don't have an accent. And I'm like, piss me off and you'll find out exactly how Boston I am.
I think the last time I saw you, you were overserved.
Where?
At the Extreme show up in Hampton Beach last year.
No, that wasn't Extreme. That was Voyage. That was Dana's Journey
Voyage?
band.
Oh, Voyage. Okay.
Yeah. I was.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what it was? I was joking with Gary about it. I got the worst case of hiccups I've ever gotten in my life at that show. I never get the hiccups.
That's funny.
I had them the next morning when I woke up.
Really?
Yeah. You know why? Because they were selling oil cans of friggin' White Claw at the Hampton Beach Casino. I hadn't left the house in a year because of COVID. And all of a sudden I'm drinking White Claws. Yeah, that was an epic night. I don't get like that very often.
You have to.
And only around friends will I let my hair down like that.
You can let the air out of the tire occasionally.
Every once in a while it happens.
That's an insane, that band with Hugo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's freakish.
So we're talking about your friend Dana's Journey cover band, who is by far, in my opinion, the best Journey cover band I've ever seen.
I think they're better than Journey presently.
And Hugo, the lead singer,
yeah,
his voice is like literally he's possessed by Steve Perry.
And his look, too. The look is what's insane.
It's unbelievable. And they are fantastic. And I had never seen them. Dana had been trying to get me out to a show, and I just never could go for whatever reason. And he was like, you got nothing else to do, Carrie. You're laid off and there's a pandemic. Will you just come to the show?
Get off your ass.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, I think that's what he said. And I went and I was like, holy shit, you guys are fantastic.
Oh, that band could tour the States nonstop, I think. If they
get along better than the original members of Journey, too.
Yeah, there's no fighting.
But I was up like dancing. It's unbelievable when you go to see a really good cover band. With a band like Journey, how many hits they have. Same thing with Aerosmith, same thing with AC/DC.
Yeah.
When you get a band that's got that many hits.
The catalog is never ending.
Yeah. It's like, how do you pick?
Oh, it's like Pat with the Dark Desert Eagles, you know?
Yeah.
The Eagles, people forget how many hits that the Eagles had.
They just played the Christmas party for my radio station, The Pike. And they played like the private party for all of us. And they were like, normally we play twice as long. Because there's that many hits.
Yeah, it's stupid. These bands nowadays don't seem to just write that like the hits anymore.
Yeah.
At least, I don't know, maybe the different era, but I don't know. You look at the first Boston album. Wasn't every song on it released?
Literally, yeah.
And that's an insane accomplishment.
Look at Appetite for Destruction. That was their debut album. Yeah. Jagged Little Pill from Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
Fallen from Evanescence, which just got certified diamond in the U.S. Wow. Like, that's got like 5 radio hits on it. It's insane.
Alanis, we had a a funny story with her. Well, my friend toured with her, and this is going back to Dream Theater when I was in Japan, and I was during the dark stage. I was polishing the cymbals, and I see a Japanese guy kind of come out from the curtain looking at me, and he's kind of sheepishly stepping closer to me, and finally he gets up in front of the drums, and I just go, "Hey, how you doing?" And in a broken English, he goes, "Is your name Magee?" And I go, "Yeah." And I kind of chirp up thinking this guy's heard of me, who I'm a nobody, but, and I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I hear you're a real fucking asshole." and then I see Petrucci's guitar tech laughing his ass off, Mark Snyder. He set him up to do it.
Oh my God. Did he even know what fucking asshole meant in English?
I don't know, but it made my day. And then, through the years, I got Mark back once. And then my mutual friend Buffer was out with Alanis Morissette. So I went to see him at Great Woods. And so I'm sitting in catering, which after the show.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, there's a lot of people in there. And Alanis Morissette comes in and literally sits in the empty seat right next to me. And I'm kind of like, whoa. And she goes, "Hey, you're Magee, right?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "I hear you're a real fucking asshole." And she gave me a big hug. She goes, "And Buffer put me up to it." I go, "That's funny. I mean,
yeah,
I've been called an asshole before, but not like that."
Not by Alanis Morissette.
I've been called, Steven's called me Humpty Dumpty once. But I think my funniest story is probably the David Lee Roth. I always say every roadie, if you got every roadie together, you could each have a chapter of a funny incident on the road.
Yep.
And in 2005, I was doing David Lee Roth, just weekend warrior stuff. Ray Luzier was the drummer.
Yeah.
Who's in Korn.
From Korn, yeah.
Incredible guy and drummer. And so it was my first show. And it was the summer. It was July, humid. And I go down there early to meet Ray. We set up the drum kit together just so I could get a feel for it. And so the show starts. And second song in, Dave kind of stops the show. And right into his mic, he calls his sound guy, this guy Doug, he calls him number 5 because he was the fifth sound guy. He goes, "Number 5, he goes, get up here and fix my microphone." I can't do the Roth imitation. Like Ray can do it so good. But the guy used to tape his mic together, so David had a habit of twisting it, and it would unscrew.
Yep.
So,
and which is where the battery goes if it's not a corded microphone.
Yeah, so I'm sitting upstage left of the drums with the guitar tech, and we're both at that point probably 320 pounds each. So I'm just watching, the band just starts kind of jamming, and all of a sudden in my ear I hear somebody go, "Tape!" And I turn and it's Roth. Now I've never met him. And being weekend warrior stuff, I just had a little bag of a few tools, and I was looking for some electrical tape because I pulled out some gaff, which doesn't stick in humidity.
Yep.
And he grabs it out of my hands and gives me a death stare and storms off. So I look at the guitar tech. I go, "What was that?" And he goes, "I don't know." And so the band finishes, and as soon as it ends, the tour manager comes. He goes, "Dave wants to see everybody in the dressing room now." So I'm the last guy in, and I walk in and Ray's in the corner, and I'm kind of going, "What's going on?" And he goes, "I don't know." And all of a sudden, Dave kicked the door in. Literally, the top hinge fell off, and he gets right into his sound guy's face. These are two legendary lines that I think. I've never heard them prior to that or after, but he goes, "You sent me into battle without a fucking sword." So that's his first line he says. And I'm looking down because I'm trying not to giggle.
Right.
And he goes, "That's like sending me into the bedroom with a broken fucking dick." So those are the first two lines out of him. So I'm just staring down, and I notice he has my gaff tape in his hand. And so he yells at the tour manager for a bit. And then he goes, "And when I'm on stage and I ask for tape, he goes, I want tape with hair on its balls, masculine tape, not this female tape." And he throws my gaff tape off the wall. And then he turns right at me and he says, "And when I ask people to move up there," he goes, "you better move." And he's like right in my face like a drill sergeant. He goes, "You were standing around up there like a couple of fucking polar bears." And I literally, I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing because it was the funniest dressing down I've ever experienced.
Oh my God.
And I see Ray was in the back just going
like, don't
waving
pick
his
a fight.
hands.
Like, he's the boss, man.
And then he even got closer to me and he says, "You got an insolent look on your face." He goes, "You got something you want to say to me?" And the first thing that popped into my head, I didn't say it, but I was going to ask him what insolent meant because I didn't know, which probably would have angered him. And
he does have a fantastic vocabulary.
oh, he's insane. I love it. And then he just stared at me and backed out and left. And I looked at everybody. I go, "What the fuck was that?" I never even met the guy. So then I break down the kit, and I'm walking backstage, and he was walking towards me. And I had heard his whole grumpiness was because he didn't get his green smoke. So he's a little cranky. And then he smiles ear to ear, and he sticks his hand out, and he goes, "Dave Roth, nice to meet you." And I go, "McGee, nice to meet you too." And that was it.
Oh my God.
And the whole rest of the summer was cool, you know. But I think that's my chapter in the funniest moment.
Yeah.
I've done stupid stuff.
Well, you're the practical joke guy. Like, I know, speaking of like the in-ears and stuff, that there's a show happening during the show as well. And bands are famous for it, especially picking on the opening act on the last night of a tour, that there's a lot of practical jokes going on, that you're talking into each other's ears during the show, that there's a whole other thing happening that we in the crowd just don't get to see.
Yeah, no, especially with Steven's mix. Like back when he would always want me to, I'd have a in-ear pack that I could flip between Joey's mix and Steven's mix. Steven's mix I called air traffic control because you're getting monitor guys talking to him, John Bianelli.
Yeah.
John runs the teleprompters. He's been with Aerosmith the longest, 30-something years. And he has a little iPad that has a lot of funny drops in it, like a lot of Larry David stuff, Three Stooges.
Oh, my God.
So I would listen and just laugh. You'd hear certain...
He's playing that in Steven Tyler's ears during the show?
Yeah, in between verses. And but then Steven wanted me to tell him jokes during the show. So they gave me a little 1-foot mic stand and tied some scarves on it. And I had my own little mic stand. And I used to have to tell him, like, funny. Remember, we've all heard of, like, the, I call them fake, but the sex moves, like the angry dragon and the jelly.
Yeah.
You know, he loved those.
The Eiffel Tower and all that stuff. Yeah.
So I would try to have to find a way to crowbar them in so he could laugh, you know.
Oh, my God.
It wasn't fun because it's, you know, I didn't want to screw up the show, but he liked it. He made me do it. So
well, he wants you to keep it light.
Oh, yeah. But,
you know?
But when you hear his mix, he just, you know, he said in the past he feels lonely out there, even though everybody's there to see him sing.
Right.
You know, and everybody's, you know, so it's just a feeling you get. It's probably like a nerve thing, I would imagine.
Well, and I think it's overwhelming. I think a lot of artists, you know, stand-up comedians too, are incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are introverted, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then I see it all the time when bands come into a radio station and they get in front of the mic and they don't know what to say. And it's like, but you're in front of a microphone on stage all night. And they're like, yeah, but it's like there's so many people. It's like it doesn't look real. This is like a one-on-one thing. And you don't know who's listening. And because there's people listening with the radios on all over the place. But a lot of creatives are very sensitive and come from backgrounds where they're trying to find a way to channel pain and emotion, and they end up writing great songs from it.
Yeah.
But then they end up on stage in front of 30,000 people.
You can't, you don't have a good stage rap sometimes.
Yeah, like now all of a sudden all these people are looking at you, and it's like you end up in a place, you know, that you never really thought you'd end up.
That's probably the Cheap Trick dynamic because Rick does most of the talking.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Robin's got the best warm-up for any vocal singer I've ever seen. He would do a shot of Jack and scream like 3 or 4 times. And that was it. And he's an amazing singer.
Oh, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, and those guys, they opened up a lot for Aerosmith.
Yeah.
So
fantastic band.
Oh, yeah. The greatest. I wish they'd got their due more, you know.
Kid Rock, when he inducted them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, said something, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but basically every rock band thinks they're great live, and then they see Cheap Trick.
Yeah.
Because they're just that good live. They're a band that, the Budokan record is what kind of broke them, and it was somehow they were able to manage to capture their magic live on an album, which is rare.
Yep, and Bunny was one of my favorite drummers to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's the definition of a fluid movement drummer.
Yeah.
And once he was out of the band, I didn't have much of a desire to see him as much.
Yeah.
But they still got amazing music.
I had Rick Nielsen on the podcast, and he and I were on Zoom so I could see him. And he's a guy that, like, the energy, you could power the world like a nuclear power plant if you could find a way to bottle Rick Nielsen.
Oh, yeah.
He just fidgets. He had a guitar with him, and he was just playing the whole time. He wouldn't sit still. He's telling me about how Paul McCartney owes him money for a guitar he sold him. And
wow.
He told me all these crazy stories talking about, like, being able to drop names. He knows everybody.
Oh, yeah. He's a legend. And I remember once talking to him, I was in front of his dressing room backstage. We were talking about something, and he goes, everybody in this band, he goes, we all share a dressing room, but he goes, whoever leaves the dressing room, everybody else talks about that person. He goes, so I never leave the dressing room till we're going on stage. So I always remembered that line from Rick.
He's funny.
Oh,
really funny guy.
He's great. And it's tough seeing all these older bands. There's been so many losses across the board.
We're not ready for what is going to happen in the next 5 years. And I'm not even trying to be pessimistic.
Yeah.
It's just there is a whole generation of rock royalty that we're just going to lose them. I think people kind of felt it, obviously, with Neil Peart when he passed away, and then Eddie Van Halen because he was young.
Yeah.
But it's like musicians seem to either die way before they should, or you get a guy like Keith Richards or, Mick Jagger or Ozzy or guys that are just, that we take for granted that we still got Paul McCartney and Ringo. It's like, we're not ready to lose these guys. I know I'm emotionally not. I mean, losing Cornell, I think, out of all of them, you talk about Scott Weiland and all of those guys. Cornell, I think I had spent the most time with, done the most interviews with. And that one, because he had been so candid, with his mental health struggles and, that I think everybody thought he was going to be one of the grunge guys that kind of made it out. And we're not ready to lose the guys we're getting ready to lose. We're just not.
No, it's a tough part of life,
Yeah.
Watching the legends one by one.
Yeah.
It is sad,
I mean, we do get the music, which is such a gift that you can leave behind a legacy like that. But we have for a long time taken for granted the longevity of these guys' careers and their ability to be able to tour, even though they don't move as fast or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at a guy like Steven Tyler, he still holds it down live, man.
Yeah.
He's still one of the best vocalists out there at his age.
He was singing great in Vegas.
Yeah.
I mean, because I listened to it, in my mix, so he's amazing. The one, in all my years of touring, I've only bought tickets twice. So I don't really go to a lot of shows.
Yeah.
When I'm home, I'm a homebody. I hang out with Dana's kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I got him a drum kit. He's on a second kit because the first one he kind of destroyed. But in just the year he's had it, it's fun to, that's kind of, I miss seeing the little guy when I'm on the road now. Because I never got married.
Yeah.
I lost my parents in the last 4 years, both of them. So, when you don't have a family at home, you kind of
adopt, you become uncle. Yeah.
And like growing up, I was never really wanted kids, but then when you, like Dana and Nicole told me they're pregnant, I'm like, well, I'm not coming over ever again. I go, and the next thing I know, I'm the godfather. I'm changing diapers.
Yep. Elbow deep in poop, baby.
I'm babysitting. I go, what is this? What happened to me? Now that's the stuff I look forward to doing and, just having fun,
Yeah.
I babysit. They go out, he has a gig, I'll watch the kids.
You've been a babysitter for decades. They were just adult babies.
Yes. And
so you've got the skill set.
I was just wiping less asses as the adults, I guess.
I'm so glad that you came to do this.
Oh, yeah, me too. I've had a blast. Hopefully, I don't know, people will like listening,
Yeah, they will, because you've got the stories of the artists they love, but from a completely different perspective, and it's part of the show that we don't get to see. You know,
Yeah.
you're kind of back there. So the next time you go to a show and you're watching the drummer, know that there's a guy, maybe Magee, maybe not,
Yeah.
that's literally sitting right behind the drummer. That's that guy, just in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, it depends. Most drummers, I sit on the upstage left shoulder, you know, the hi-hat side.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see them. That's the best view for me.
Yeah, you're like the catcher on a baseball team. You got the best view.
It is. And but what I was going back to though, I'd only bought tickets twice.
Oh yeah,
in 27 years now to see, and you could probably have a million guesses and not guess who I bought tickets to see.
Oh man,
it's.
I'm assuming that they're not even rock related, right?
No.
Yeah.
Ton of hits.
Hits.
Canadian.
Celine Dion.
No. He's 83 years old now.
Oh man.
I'll give you a hint. The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? No, Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, okay.
So I love Gordon and me. I got me, Gary, Dane, and Nicole. We went a few years ago, and then I bought tickets this year. I bought a single seat, and 2 days before I got called, they needed an emergency drum tech fill-in. So my ticket, I couldn't go see him, and I was so pissed. It was $160. I'm not mad about the money. I was like, oh, that's the one thing I enjoy. He's not going to be around much longer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He's on my Mount Rushmore of singer-songwriters. Though.
I think back to the shows that I worked as a tech before people had smartphones in their pocket where you could take pictures.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I did lights for B.B. King once at a college. Wow. It's like, it's fucking B.B. King. And I don't have any pictures.
Yeah.
I ran lights for Tito Puente.
Oh, wow.
George Clinton in the Parliament Funkadelic, like all these crazy, and I was like, what am I doing here?
I know. That's
but those
cool
are
memories, though.
Yeah, those are the stories that like you just kind of wake up and go like, where the hell did this all come from? I just wish I had more pictures from that era.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have cameras with us all the time.
And a lot of the best stuff isn't documented.
Yeah, because you're working.
Yeah, but in 2018, I got lucky. I went out on Ringo Starr. I was kind of the carpenter teleprompter guy, and I would help out Jeff, who's Ringo's tech, a little bit.
Yeah.
But Jeff was the sole drum tech for both kits. But and I remember sitting in catering once at a table, Lukather, another couple of crew guys, and had a plate of meat and potatoes on the thing, and Ringo is a diehard vegetarian.
Yeah.
And I never really talked to him much. I met him the first day. That was it. And he slides in and basically presses right up against me at catering. Now, I start getting a little flustered. I mean, this is a Beatle.
Yeah.
And I don't really get shell-shocked at celebrities.
If you're going to get starstruck by anybody, it's a Beatle.
Yeah, so he starts talking to me about the rapper Drake. Yeah, I'm not a fan, but he said his son was talking to him about Drake and this and that, and he's still touching me, like leaning on me the whole way, and I've kind of pushed my plate away when he wasn't looking. I didn't want him to see it, but so that was like, you're like, this guy's a Beatle, and you're sitting here bumping shoulders talking about a rapper,
Yeah.
I don't know. So that was kind of a surreal moment for me that I'll never forget.
That's on my Rushmore. Like, there's only 2 Beatles left. I've never met a Beatle, seen him in concert, obviously, but to get to interview a Beatle to me would be a career highlight because,
oh yeah,
like I said,
they're the best.
They're the best, and they're not getting any younger. And there's only 2 of them left.
I know, and Paul, I don't know. Paul does obviously bigger numbers than Ringo, but still. That Ringo tour, it was a short run for a month, but it was incredible because the premise. You got an all-star band.
Yep.
And my favorite singer of the night was Colin Hay from Men at Work. I mean, Who Can It Be Now?
Yeah.
I mean, that his voice sounds just as amazing as it did on the album.
Yep.
So, and you got the Toto stuff, and Journey. But now Edgar Winter's in the band.
I just interviewed him on the show a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
And talked on Zoom, and all of a sudden he just pops up, and it's Edgar Winter, and I was like, oh, and he was in his home studio. He was like, welcome to Winterland. And like, it was so cool.
Oh, yeah, another legend,
And he was talking about all of the people that he got on this record, Brother Johnny, and he's dropping names like Ringo and Joe Walsh and like all of these guys. And it was just like, oh my. And did you know they're brothers-in-law?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. And he's like, yeah, Joe Walsh and Ringo's wives are sisters. And so it's like, can you imagine like those Christmases or whatever? It's like, what?
I know. The last show we did at the Hollywood Bowl, they sat, Joe next to me at Teleprompter World because he, the Hollywood Bowl. Have you ever been there?
No. It's a famous venue.
Yeah, it's famous, but well, it wasn't much for on-stage seating. But
yeah.
So he sat right next to me. He couldn't get his sport bottle of water open, so I opened it for him. But, you see these people, and they're just normal people for the most part.
Yeah.
And they appreciate somebody who's not, going to grovel over them.
Yeah.
You treat me with respect, I'll treat you with respect.
Yep.
And that's how it goes in life.
Kind of hard to do with a guy at the level of Ringo or McCartney, though.
That's different.
Like even musicians are nerding out over those guys.
Oh, yeah, that goes out the window.
Yeah. Which has got to be really weird when literally no one can treat you normal.
I know, but they like to be treated normal.
Yeah,
and that's one of I got a lot of different cool mementos through the years of, I got hundreds and hundreds of drumsticks from different drummers and signed stuff. But, two of the coolest things I have is Ringo's drumsticks from the night we played Boston. So I got his sticks from that night, and I have something I know nobody on the planet has.
Oh God!
It's from Peter Criss. When on the last Aerosmith Kiss tour, he would always come down. We had a spinning stage with a tunnel in the middle.
Yeah.
So all our tech work boxes were inside the tunnel. So I would let Peter's tech use my world. And Peter, we had a seat for him. He'd come down during the bass solo and have his Gatorade, and he would take a little bit of oxygen. And so I have his oxygen mask bag that's got a little bit of the white grease paint. He signed the bag. And, so I know there's not one of those out there.
Nope.
So I got it locked up in my gun safe.
That's like having the little kid harmonica from Steven Tyler. Like it's those weird little mementos.
Yeah. It's the only thing on the planet.
Yeah.
That nobody has.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, now I'm at this age where I got so much stuff, and I'm like, what am I going to do with all this stuff?
I know.
So I don't know.
Yeah, you got plenty of time to figure it out.
Well, you hope. You just never know.
Yeah, you never know.
But I was telling Dana's kid the other day, I go, when I go to heaven, I go, you can have all this stuff. And he goes, can I have it now? I'm like, no, you got to wait. Wait till I'm floating up there.
Oh, my God. Kids do say the funniest things for sure.
It is. That's a funny that TV show is great, but it's the truth.
No, it's absolutely
the stuff that comes out of their mouths it kills you.
So what's next? Where are you going next?
Well, I'm working on a few things. Hopefully in February and March I got something lined up. Still waiting to cement it.
Yeah.
And, just trying to piece some stuff together. I'm not sure when Aerosmith is going to do something again.
Yeah.
Joe's got Hollywood Vampires in June and July.
Yep.
So that's out. So we'll just kind of wait and see what happens. Sometimes when I'm home, I work with my buddy Brian he owns an excavation landscaping company. So being a laborer at 52 isn't ideal, but
yeah,
I appreciate him, giving me the opportunity to work and make some money and
keep yourself busy while you're
and so I do that sometimes. Not
in
the winter though.
It's a very strange lifestyle to like be all or nothing. Where you're either out on the road immersed in work or you're home doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And when I'm home, I do a lot of stuff for people. Like I said, the babysitting, or picking them up from school, or doing this for somebody. I like to kind of stay busy, but there's also days where I kind of like, well, I'm going to watch movies for 8 hours and not do a thing, especially when it's 2 degrees out.
Coming and doing your friend's podcast,
Oh, I know. I appreciate the opportunity. This is fun.
Yeah, it's not bad. Right? You should do a drum tech podcast.
Yeah, I'd probably get 4 viewers.
No, I think it would be hilarious, and I bet you'd get a lot more people listening than you think. The Frank Sgambellone episode of the podcast is one of my most listened to episodes. And I told Frank that, and he was like, why? And I'm like, because you've got stories no one else has.
I know. When you told me he had done that, I said, he's the funniest guy ever. And you said it wasn't even about that. It was about, but he is on the road.
Oh, so funny.
That kid, he made me laugh hard. He says the same thing about me, apparently. He says I'm the funniest guy he's toured with. I say he's the funniest, but
Maybe I got to get the both of you guys in here together.
well, yeah, that would be fun.
That would be hilarious.
I haven't seen him in a while though, but I
He's
know
always
he's
working.
down in Rhode Island still, or did he move?
No, I think he's in Mass now.
Oh, is he in Mass?
Yeah, but he's always out on the road.
I know he stays. There's certain guys that just stay real busy.
Yeah.
You know, guitar techs tend to stay more busy because there's often multiple guitarists in bands.
Right.
You only get the one drum guy.
Yep.
So it's kind of harder to get gigs sometimes.
Yeah.
So you just do what you can. You survive, save money. I don't have much of a future, so I always say my dream is to get hit by lightning on stage at age 72 and just drop me, smother my ashes, bury me in a kick drum, and I'll be all set.
Well, I'm glad you had time off to come and hang out with me today. So.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. You got to come back. I'll let you know what the feedback is on the show.
All right.
I guarantee you'll be surprised by what the audience has to say.
All right. Well, I hope so.
There he is, the polar bear himself, Magee, John McGarry. You'll never watch a drummer the same way again. And the next time you see Aerosmith, you'll be wondering what the hell is going on in Steven Tyler's ears. You definitely want to check out the corresponding playlist for this week's episode. It's filled with all the artists that Magee has worked with and all the artists we talked about in this interview. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday, plus every weekday you get the sit rep. The Situation Report gives you all of your rock news, entertainment updates, and music headlines, and it's all in 5 minutes. Plus, you never know when we're going to release a bonus episode. Hang out with me live every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern for my video show on my official Facebook page, Cocktails in the War Room. And you can always listen to the Mistress Carrie radio show. Start your 2023 off right and fashionably with all of the gear in the Mistress Carrie online shop. Get the details on all that and more online at mistresscarrie.com. And if you want details on how to sponsor the Mistress Carrie podcast, just click the Message the Studio link. The Mistress Carrie podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.